That's a monkey selfie. Okay, and let's take a look at this. So we are looking at dividing by fractions and the effect that that has. So there's different ways you can divide fractions. Generally, it would be good to start, if you see a whole number, you're going to want to make that look like a fraction, right? So that just kind of sticks with everything we know. This year, if we're going to do any math with numbers, we want them to kind of look the same. So we're going to start with this idea of turning 9 into 9 over 1. Now, when we have 9 wholes and we divide by 1/4 is little, right? So a lot of 1/4 are going to fit into that 9, right? So if we're starting here with our input of 9, and then we cut it up into pieces that are only 1/4 each, we can just start thinking about, okay, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Well, that's 4, and we're only at 1 whole right now, right? This is actually a problem that we had done on the previous activity, so cutting wood. If you go back and look at cutting wood, 9 divided by 1/4, you should have an answer here, and that answer should be 36, right? So we know that the answer is 36. The tricky thing is, where does it come from? So some of you might be seeing that 9 and the 4 and wondering if that relationship has anything to do with 36. It definitely does, but there's a slight change we need to make, okay? So if I come over here, right, so it says dividing by a fraction is going to be the same thing as multiplying by that fraction's reciprocal. Okay, so the step one is just to kind of start with the same input. One thing you're going to hear me say all year, you cannot change where you start. So in life or in math, you can't change where you start, but you can change where you go. So I was born in Chicago, right? There's nothing I can do to change that, but I can move, right? Now I can move and I can end up at the same place, moving in different directions, right? So if I say, like, how would you go home? You can go home in different ways, right? But we're going to start at the same place. So if you start at Ann Richards, you go home. You can maybe take different directions to get there, but you could still end up in the same place, right? So I can start with 9 over 1. I can end at 36, but there's a different way to get there. So if I just make this look like a fraction, 36 over 1, and ask you to think about how could you make this 1 into a 1 using multiplication, you would probably tell me just multiply by 1, right? And if I said 9 times a number makes 36, it's 4, I know. Okay, so I'll write it down. Good. So I want you to look here and kind of focus on the change, right? So there's two things that are different. Here we divide, here we multiply. Here we have 1/4. Here we have the reciprocal of 1/4, which is 4 over 1, right? And so if we notice, start in the same place, end in the same place, the only difference here, we're getting the same answer, it's just that we're taking the division and flipping it to multiplication. If I flip that, I'm going to go ahead and flip the fraction as well, and it's going to have the same effect, okay? So the idea here is that dividing by something small makes a number bigger, right? We started with a 9, we divided by something small, 1/4, and the effect of that was it actually multiplied the original number by 4 to end up with 36. If you look at the examples below, one thing that'll be really easy is the start is always going to stay the same. The only difference is going to be, instead of dividing, we're going to multiply. And then the reciprocal is going to be the value that changes this input into what the solution is. Okay? Things that you can always do too, if you look at some of these fractions, you're probably wondering, can I simplify? You can simplify beforehand. Just make sure when you come over here, you're not changing that first number once you've decided, like, for example, 2 out of 12 could be simplified to 1 out of 6. I'm going to bring that 1 out of 6 over here, and I'm going to multiply with it. So the first number does not change. You cannot change where you start. You can change where you go, and then our answer is going to be whatever happens as a result of this multiplication problem. Cool. I hope that was pretty clear. We're going to practice this more in class. Good luck.
That's a monkey selfie.